Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP here, and I've got Artie Kornfeld, and I just want to say I want to give a big thank you to East Song Global Rock. Also, I want to thank Tony and Donna Evans King and Bob Evans from Badfinger for helping us put this together. And also, Artie, you want to thank who's helping you there?
Oh, I want to thank Caroline and Franco for helping me here, my fourth wife, Caroline. And I want to thank you, brother. And I want to thank the Lottie Daz for having hits with the Pied Piper and the Bangles for being in Australia. And Paul Simon, my cousin Barry, who played with Paul Simon and opened a poetry company in Melbourne 50 years ago.
Just your mind and the child that's stricken you. So fall in line. Yeah, come on, babe. Follow me. I'm the Pied Piper. Follow me. I'm the Pied Piper. And I'll show you where it's at. Come on, babe. Can't you see? I'm the Pied Piper. Trust in me, I'm the Pied Piper, and I'll show you where life is at. Hey, babe, come on, babe, follow me. I'm the Pied Piper. Follow me. I'm the Pied Piper, and I'll show you where it's at. Come on, babe, can't you see? I'm the Pied Piper. Trust in me. I'm the Pied Piper, and I'll show.
That's fantastic, Artie. Now, I want to say, everyone knows that you're the godfather of Woodstock, but I want to get into something different with you now. I want to start off with Paul and John and the Beatles, and tell me a couple of stories. And I know that Paul rang you up because you wanted to go to the Whiskey A Go Go. Is that right? Can you tell me that
Oh, I'll
story?
tell you, I want to hear, I'll tell you a more amazing story. Okay.
Okay.
So here I am. I'm 22 years old. I've already run Roulette Records. I put out Tommy Giants and Jackie Wilson. I run Mercury. I put out Walk Away Renee and Wild Thing. And then I did a demo of a so-called The Pied Piper when I had time in the studio. That took a half hour. Okay. And then my and then all of a sudden I get approached by Capitol to be the first vice president of rock in the music industry. And you know what? I was as impressed with the Beatles. The man who hired me started Capitol, and the first act he hired was Frank Sinatra. Okay, the last act he hired before he left was five companies turned him down. He signed the Beatles, and he put out. I did not like. I want to hold your hand. I thought it was too bubblegum. I really did. And I apologize for giving you hanky panky, but it started a good career for Tommy James. I thought it was so bubblegum, but I threw it out anyway. The Beatles, the Beatles, the Beatles. Of course, I loved the Beatles as much as you did. I had an apartment that I could hear. Maureen worked with Sid Bernstein, and he brought the Beatles over to America and did that concert in Shea Stadium in New York. And I could hear the crowd. I was across the park that was in front of them. and it was amazing. The volume coming about 4 miles, it was like bizarre, and they hated it because they couldn't hear themselves. And okay, so now Paul McCartney. Okay, so now at that point I was, I think, at Mercury. I don't know where I was at. I was at one of the companies, and before that, I was a writer for Donnie Kershaw. I was writing with Jerry Goffin and Carole King and Neil Sedaka and Barry Mann, and I had hits with the Turtles and Jane the Americans, and I had about 55 songs recorded by name artists, and it was a shock because I was a symphony trumpet player and a baseball player. What can I tell you? It's in the morning. I haven't slept. I'm up all night, and I decide I leave Linda, and we had Clarissa, my housekeeper, with my daughter in another room, and I go down to the pool, and there's like 400 people at the Beverly Hills Hotel around the pool, and they're all staring at this guy in the pool. Nobody's in the water. But I'm seeing Jerry Wexler, who owned Atlantic, and I'm seeing Jack Oldsman, who had the Eagles and had Electric, and I'm seeing musicians, and they're all around. No one's going in the water but this one guy. And I take a look and I say, gee, I think that's McCartney. So what I do is I jump in the water and I swim underwater the whole pool, and I come up next to him and I pull off his bathing suit. And then I come up right next to his shoulder, and he looks down at me and he goes, "Oh, who are you? Hello, glad to meet you." I go, "Paul?" He says, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Artie Kornfeld." "So, we're the guy we're dealing with on the Apple Car stuff." He said, he said, "Come here." He says, "Ivan," and then he calls Ivan, this guy Ivan, and Ivan is the guy that introduced John to Paul. He was a school teacher in England, and John took him on trips with him. They were good friends, and that was how I met Paul. And then we became really good friends immediately, just immediately. And then he says to me, I said, well, let's go back to my suite, and we went back to the place, and we stayed up, for a night, and then we go to sleep, and then I get a call, and it's Paul. He goes, Artie, he says, I never saw Albert King, and he's playing at the Whiskey. And I said, Lindy, it's a little dangerous going to the Whiskey with Paul McCartney in the middle of Beatlemania to see Albert King. I said, this is dangerous. So we went, and it was a trip. On the way back, there was 300 girls on the limo, and as they fell off, we finally got away. So that was Paul. You know what? He was like a high school chum. It was like we went to school together. Now my relationship later on with John was much different, but that was Paul, and I loved Paul. He was like a buddy in school, and he was there was no airs about him. He respected me because I had written at that point I had more chart songs than he did. He only had a couple of chart songs. I had already been writing for 10 years before the Beatles came out. So it was like he respected me, and I respected him, and I loved him. So that's Paul.
Tell us the John
Okay,
story.
John. Okay, now I sign an act. I moved to Coconut Grove, Florida, because that was a big music center and also importation center. And I sign a band, and I go up to New York to the record plant. That's where John did Imagine. And he's in with Jack Douglas, and I'm with my engineer who I started, Shelley Yakus, who did Nevada, who did, Shelley Yakus did a million things. It's one of my best friends. And my late wife, Linda Kornfeld, was spectacularly wonderful. She's in the Woodstock movie. People see her. And we lived in the West Indies a lot because at Capitol, they wanted me. I wrote my own contract, and I had no oversight. So I would be going to Jamaica to hear reggae music every other week. Then I'd be going somewhere else to hear the ska, So, and anyway, it was all covered, because it was paid for. And I approved the expense accounts. And I, I I'm in the studio, and it's 2 in the morning, and I had a problem. I founded Cocaine Anonymous. I put together the first meeting, and it was a 14-year run. I wanted to get away. I wanted to escape. I couldn't take it anymore. But anyway, then I could take it. Hey, so I give the guys a break in the studio, and I go, okay, guys, let's take about 20 minutes. And I go in the bathroom, and then I feel wet stream going down my left leg. And I look over my shoulder, and it's effing John Lennon's face on my shoulder. And I go, and I'm still like a groupie. I mean, I'm successful and famous, and I've already toured with Sonny and Cher on the I Got You Babe tour and done 28 shows. I've played, and I can't believe John Lennon's on my shoulder. And then he goes, "Who are you?" I go, "Artie Kornfeld." He goes, "Oh, your wife's Linda. She's wonderful. She's been bringing me galwaz." And 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 he said, "I'm so sorry what I just did." He said, "Without my specs, I left him in the studio, and I couldn't see you." And I said, "Well, that's quite all right, because I was in a state of shock anyway. Because and I knew all great writers, and I wrote with great writers, and I wrote with Del Shannon, and I wrote with Bobby Fuller. I fought the law, and I wrote with a lot of people, but it was fucking John Lennon." And he says to me out of nowhere, it blew my mind. He goes, "You're Artie Kornfeld." He says, "You're the writer." And I said, "John Lennon's telling me I'm the writer?" I didn't know what to do. I was still shocked. He said, "I was watching Top of the Pops, and Crispy and St. Peter came on singing your song, The Pied Piper." He said, "And I loved it." Yeah, he said, "And I ran out. And that's the first record I ever bought." And I go, "Oh my God, John Lennon's telling me that my song was the first song he ever bought and telling me I'm a good writer."
You, with your masquerading, and you always contemplating what to do in case happiness found you. Can't you see that it's all around you? So follow me. Hey, come on, babe, follow me. I'm the Pied Piper. Follow me, I'm the Pied Piper, and I'll show you where it's at. Come on, babe, can't you see? I'm the Pied Piper. Trust in me, I'm the Pied Piper, and I'll show you where it's at.
When they lost Brian Epstein, the man who really managed them and who started them, and George Martin he was magic in their world. He was magic to them, and uh, and that was it. That's how John and we sat there and we talked after every session, 2 or 3 in the morning. We go in the lounge and we sit and talk. Never talked about the Beatles, never talked about Woodstock, didn't talk about the music business. It was just, I call it ethereal cereal.
How did the Lady Does get the song Pied Piper? Did they just record it, or did they tell you they're going to do it, the record company from
I
here?
just looked on the charts. It's like, no, I just looked on the charts and I saw it #1 in Australia, Lottie Does. And then the Bangles did How's the Air Up There. Vicky Peterson, well, I produced the Cow Souls, and I love my song. I love the flower girl. Well, I don't know. Yeah, so they're they're doing that. In fact, I interviewed them both. I did an internet show called The Spirit of Woodstock '69, and I did it for 5 years for free, 1 hour a week, and I wound up with 20 million hits because Woodstock was so hot, and I was a folk hero then, and I was still a kid. I was still a kid. I didn't know what was going on. I just know I like to make music.
I saw her sitting in the rain, raindrops falling on her. She didn't seem to care. She sat there and smiled at me. Then I knew she could make me happy. She could make me very happy. Flowers in her hair, flowers everywhere. I love the flower girl. Oh, I don't know just why. She simply caught my eye. I love the flower girl. She seemed so sweet and kind. She crept into my mind.
The Castles in Australia were huge, and that song was huge. And being on the Ed Sullivan doing that show, that was huge. Just tell me about the Castles them doing your song, the Rain the Park and other things. How great was
Oh,
that?
okay. Okay. So now I go to Mercury and they assign me this kid group. And I said, I'm not doing this. I don't want to do this. And they said, well, you got to do them. And I started to hang out with them, and they played good and they sang good. They were like 13 to 16. That was their age. And I turned down working on the Dave Clark Five. I turned down the Monkees.
Yeah.
I
Tell me
passed
about that.
Donnie Kirster called me, and I produced a single with Davy Jones. I was a Donnie Kirster writer. That was Goffin and King and Man and Wild and Sadaka and Bobby Darin, and we were the hottest publishing company in the world. And I they assigned me to councils. I said, no effing way. I don't want to work with a kid group. And then I started to hang out with them. They had a father who was in the Navy, he was like, I wrote with Brian Wilson because we wrote Dead Man's Curve, and that was number one. And he was the head of the beat. And, the Beach Boys did say Pet Sounds is why they did Sergeant Pepper. So Brian was a genius. And, and here I had these kids. And you know what? I was getting a great salary, and money was never why I did music. I swear, and I'm telling the truth. Money was never why I did music because I love to do music and I love to get people off, okay, make their life better. And then I thought to myself, so then the Osmond brothers called me. I turned them down. And then Donnie says, Artie, we want you to produce the Monkees. You'll make a fortune. You'll be the writer, the producer. You'll do everything. I said, Donnie, I'm leaving with Charles Koppelman. I'm going to his new company. And I had the cow souls, and I spent about almost 200 grand keeping them alive for a couple of years. And all my friends, now you know my friends, like Hugh McCracken, the guitar player who played the lead on The Thriller's Gone and arranged, he produced Alicia Keys, and he produced Dr. John. Hugh McCracken was an incredible guitar player. And my studio guys, much better than the Wrecking Crew, believe me, because I work with the Wrecking Crew too. And we, they were all teasing me, what are you doing with these kids? And I said, well, you know what? America was founded on the family, and they're a family, and I like being with them, And if I write the song, I'm going to take them to number one. I never had a number one. Well, yeah, Dead Man's Curve, maybe Pipe Piper, almost one and two. And I said, if I write the song, I said, America was people sitting around a table, a family, drinking milk, eating eggs or a piece of pie, and that was America. And so P.S. later, 150 grand out of my pocket. And I quit. And then Mercury drops the councils. So I resign. I have no income now. And I resigned from Capitol. And then Steve sits at the piano and he plays a chord. And for some reason I saw her sitting in the park. And I don't know what I was singing about. I have no idea what I'm singing about. And I write this song and with Steve, and then we go teach it to the kids, and then I go in and I cut it. What amazes me, it was only 4 track, and I got it on the first mix. I got it on the first mix. I was producing someone for Mercury, and if you were at Mercury, if you were an A&R exec, you got their studio for 3 hours, and I was doing demos with a guy I was going to sign, and I was using Blood, Sweat, and Tears rhythm section. They hadn't happened yet, and I had an hour left over. So in that hour, Steve and I wrote the song, taught it to the band, told the band to rehearse, came back, did the vocals, did the harmonies, mixed it, mastered it, did everything to it, and forgot it. Okay. 4 years later, I'm sitting in a restaurant. Oh, okay, now the councils. Okay. So we write the Rain in the Park, and the B side is a Motown song. Anytime you need some affection, come around here. I'm the one you need. And I didn't want to put out, it was called I Love the Flower Girl. So 3 days before it's going to be shipped, the president of MGM calls me and says, Artie, we can't put out that song with that title because if you're going to San Francisco where flowers in your hair is taken off, then it's going to kill it. And he said, give me a title. And why I said the Rain in the Park and other things, your guess, Danny, is as good as mine. Or plastic, right? Is that in plastic, right?
Yeah.
It's as good. It's as good as the reason I had. I had no reason. I just said I saw the rain in the park and other things. That was the title. And I said, I don't think you could fit that on a 45, on a CD. I don't think you could put the name there. And comes out, and I knew the Bee Gees. I knew the person. They were kids, and they came out the same day, and they were a family, and they were great. Councils kept going, and then I got them on Ed Sullivan, and I was the first producer on Ed Sullivan because I knew Ed and his wife. I actually knew Ed and Sylvia, and I uh, I met him from Burt Bacharach and Angie Dickinson, the actress who was his wife at a party, and he let me come in. And I worked for 2 hours, and I did a mix in the control room before the show came on. No one ever did that. What happens? The show comes on. By mistake, the engineer kicks the cord out, and it starts with all I hear is an organ, like 80 miles away. Dee, 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 dee. Okay. So they do the Rain in the Park and other things, which is the song title now. I knew I had the song, and I set it up, and I knew radio because I had a lot of hit. I had a lot of AM hit radio songs. I had a lot of AM, and I had a lot of FM songs, and FM was just coming on in those days, and I was really FM, and and the Cowsills did the Ed Sullivan Show, and took off, and that song is still going around the world now. It's like I love the Flower Girl. And you know what? That song predicts Woodstock. What do you think it's about? And I didn't even know I was going to do a Woodstock then. I saw her sitting in the park, raindrops falling on her. I loved it. And my wife passed away. So I turned around, she was gone suddenly. And all I had left was my daughter, one little flower in my hand, and she passed away. But I knew she had made me happy. She had flowers in her hair, flowers everywhere. And that's been my problem my whole life. I always loved the Flower Girls.
Tell me the story of Aerosmith and Walking in the Sand.
Walking in the Sand. Okay. I get a call from Lieber and Krebs. They manage Aerosmith and AC/DC. And they produce Beatlemania on Broadway. And they call me up and they go, Artie, I never promoted anything for anybody. They call me up and they go, Artie, Aerosmith's going to be dropped by Clive Davis and Columbia. And we have an album coming out it was called Night in the Ruts. But if you turn the cover sideways, it said Right in the Nuts. And he said, and we got a tour coming. You ready for that one? He said, we got a tour coming called the Nightmare Tour. And he said, Artie, you know everybody at radio. Could we hire you to promote this album and promote the tour? And I said, well, I don't do that. I don't do promotion. Now, if I would have done promotion, my best records you never heard. I didn't know promotion. That was the first thing I promoted. So I went out and I had already done Woodstock, right? And so what I did is I went to radio stations all over America and promoters, and I set up the Nightmare Tour. And then I was there when they did Walking in the Sand. I was in the studio, and I heard it on the Aerosmith album, and I loved their version. And it came out, and I pushed it, and it happened. And
if you can tell me about Davy Jones, you helped him in some way, Artie?
Well, we were you know what? It started out. Did you ever see The Rifleman?
Yep,
Chuck
the TV
Connor,
show, yeah.
Johnny Crawford.
Yep.
Well, Jan and I, from Jan and Dean, we wrote a song and we produced a hit with Johnny Crawford. I love Johnny. What a great kid. So now I'm in New York, and Kirshner says to me, Artie, we sighted this kid. And my friend Lionel Bart, Sir Lionel Bart from England, he wrote the show Oliver, and Davy Jones played the Artful Dodger in the show Oliver. And we produced him. So we wrote a song, and I produced Davy, and Dead Man's Curve was a hit. So I said to Kirshner, I said, you know what? Jan has a Corvette, Brian has a Corvette, and I'm driving a 54 Chevy. I said, I want a Corvette. Could you give me an advance? And I got my Corvette, and they gave me a pin that you put on the lapel of your shirt. And I gave it to Davy, and it was hard saying no. I just didn't want to produce a band that was actors. It wasn't real to me. I would have rather produced a garage band than a band on Broadway. And you know, the only one that was close, I think, was Nesmith. I think it was either one that was the closest to being a real musician. And they happened. And you know what? By turning that down, I probably cost myself $1 million. But so what? I never did the music for the money. I did it because I couldn't stop doing music. And I wanted to affect my generation was the World War II babies. And we would be forever the largest generation in the history of the world. And guys, I played football. I led it in 5 sports.
Artie, I just got to ask you now, just about a couple of artists that were at Woodstock, and I'm going to start with Jefferson Airplane, Grace Slick. Now, I've got to tell you, that song, Somebody to Love, I think it's one of the greatest songs, and their performance was unbelievable. Can you just tell me a bit about Jefferson Airplane?
Well, Marty Ballin was my friend. They were West Coast. I was East Coast. I was LA. They were San Francisco. Uh, I just loved finding somebody to love, and I thought her vocal on White Rabbit was incredible, and I knew them, but we all knew each other, It was a small family then.
Greatest event that happened in the world was Woodstock. Now, I've got to ask you about Melanie. I was fortunate enough to interview Melanie before she passed away.
Well, I was fortunate enough to discover Melanie. Okay. And when her husband died, she called me 15 minutes after he died, Peter, and asked me would I manage her. And I said, Melanie, I can't even manage myself. I said, but I love you. We've been friends. I loved her since she did Beautiful People. You live in the same world that I do. And I helped her get the deal with Kama Sutra Buddha. My friend owned it and got her out. And I always loved Melanie. And I had Bert Summer, and they were good friends. And by the way, Bert Summer got the only really true standing ovation at Woodstock. And I produced 3 albums with Bert, and I was already out of the company because I didn't want it to be in the paper that we were all fighting over money. Because Woodstock I was the only party that didn't do Woodstock for money. I did it to protest the war in Vietnam and to unite the war babies from World War II, our generation. And you're a follow up to our generation,
Of
your
course.
generation.
Now, I've got to ask you about Jimi Hendrix and the experience. Tell me what that was like at Woodstock. Did that blow everyone away? Because, I mean, you were there. I mean, the only person who can really tell the real story is
Well,
yourself.
I had seen I had Jim Buddy Miles was a friend of mine, and I had Jimmy and Buddy over my apartment in New York till wee hours of the morning, and I knew them, and it was just stupid that he got there at 8 o'clock. His contract did say that he would be the closing act, but nobody knew that Lang was going to stretch it out and put on these unknown acts. Keith Hartley, Quill, who are they? Who are they? And Jimmy got there at 8 o'clock, and he was going to play at 9. And he got there at 8 o'clock with the band of Gypsy and the Experience, and I knew them all. And he got there because he wanted them to feel the vibe before they played. And they were ready at 9 o'clock. And I kept calling him out. It was already 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. And he's going, Hardy, I'm going to kill that mother, I'm going to. And I'm in that picture. I'm in all those T-shirts and posters. I'm standing right. I'm the guy right behind him on his left shoulder because I was just shocked at what I was seeing. And then when we walked off the stage, I said, Jimmy, how did you do? And he goes, Artie, just average, just average. I said, Jimmy, you were incredible. But he wasn't the best guitar player at Woodstock. You would know who I think was? Alvin Lee. And 10 years after, his guitar on Going Home, and also Leo Lyons, the bass player, was a friend of mine in that band. And that hypnotized me. Jimmy, if you like to see a guy humping a guitar on stage, Jimmy was the guy. But Alvin Lee was real blues. Jimmy was great. It was spectacular. But my studio player, Hugh McCracken, God Almighty, he produced Alicia Keys' 20 million selling double album. He played the lead on Aerosmith Walk This Way. It wasn't Perry, it was Hugh McCracken. The New York studio guys, they were great. They played on everything from Burt Bacharach and Dionne Warwick to like the Pied Piper by me and Steve. You know, that's the story.
Being Capitol Record vice president of rock, I mean, that's like such a genre that it covered everything. And like, you don't know how great you are to the world, and you leave such a great legacy to everybody. I mean, do you feel that now in 2025?
You know what? I brought the Hollies to America in '64, and I've been friends with Graham since '64. That's important to me, right? You know, the fact that I met John, that's important to me. The fact that I was at Capitol, the fact that I quit that, and I was going to be, if I stayed, I would have been, by 26, I would have been the president of Capitol. And I quit to do Woodstock for nothing, $500 a week. I was making like 4,000 a week from Capitol. And it was never the money to me. It really wasn't honest. It was the thrill of going in the studio and having these great musicians to work with. You know, God Almighty. I mean, I followed the Lottie Das when they had the hit with the Pied Piper. Yeah, no, I love the musicians. You know what? And I was known. I never lost my temper once in the studio in about 60 albums. Never lost my temper. Oh, I would be the guy that would say, "Okay, guys, I'm on a call. Do you?" That's my head ringing. I said, "Do you want steak or do you want lobster for dinner?" And I give 15 guys, and I go way over budget. But you know what? I approved the budgets. I had no oversight. Is that crazy?
It's
I signed a
crazy.
contract and nobody's watching over me. The president loved me. And you know, with the first act he signed, when Capitol first opened, he signed Frank Sinatra. And before he left, after 5 labels turned him down, he signed the Beatles. And I got a good Paul McCartney story, and it's about Eleanor Rigby.
Yep.
So Alvin Livingston, the president, invites my late wife and myself and Paul over to his house for dinner. And we get there and we leave the convention. And he says, "Artie, come into the living room. There's a piano. I got to play you something." And he plays me this really strange melody. Ba, 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 ba. And he says, "Artie, I don't know what to do with this. I think I'll throw it out." I said, "No, there's something about it, Paul. It's very intriguing. Why don't you put a lyric on it?" He says, "I can't come up with a lyric on it." I said, "Do me a favor, put anything on it and then send it to me. Let me see what you, and then 3 weeks later, I get to get the record and it's Eleanor Rigby. I said, "Boy, you got to be kidding. This is great. Let's put it out." And well, we did. I was there like it was accident. I had nothing to do with it other than saying, "Paul, that's an interesting melody. Why don't you put something on it?"
Artie, can I ask you about Dusty Springfield?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing she was gay because there was a dinner in LA, and Ahmet Ertegun and Jerry Wexler, who owned Atlantic, and they say to me, "Artie, would you accompany Dusty Springfield to the dinner? We got a limousine." And I got in with Dusty, and I thought she was great because Bush and Hope, and that was a great, that was Bacharach and David, Burt Bacharach and Hal David were great writers. And she was charming. She was charming. And then the song I wrote, Guess Who, went top 10 in London. And then I wrote another one that I didn't even know she recorded called Now That You're My Baby, and that went top 10. And I was so proud to have a Dusty Springfield record. That's, I didn't ego out on it because I don't know where it came from. It came from a power greater than myself.
I got to ask you about Depeche Mode.
Best mode, okay. I helped start alternative rock in America. I'm in LA. There's a station there called K Rock, and all the other stations are number one. K Rock's fun number 14 in the LA market. It only has a 5,000 watt signal. Everybody else is 100,000 watts. And I go over to meet the program director because no one ever meets him. And we sat down and talked. And within 2 months, I was helping a program, the station. And then K Rock with one station, and it only got to a third of Los Angeles, okay? And I started by working, Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey, Mickey, right? And I said, oh my God, this is bubblegum, but I'm working anyway. And and then what happens is he has a guy named the Swedish Eagle from Scandinavia, and what he's doing is he's bringing in these alternative European records, and I think it was Hungry Like the Wolf, you know, and we started to do alternative, and then Infinity Broadcasting buys K Rock, and now Ricky is the program director of 150 stations in America. So there's K Rock in New York, there's K Rock all over the place, and uh, and I got very I could support my family. You know, it's like every record that came out, I was hired on because they wanted K Rock in the chain. He had 150 stations. He picked the music. But anyway, I could say, Ricky, you know what? Take this record should go like it to number 18 this week. Don't make it go to 14, it'll look phony. And we were good friends until he passed away, and I loved him very much. And he started alternative music in America.
Your career, your life, your achievements, there's no one like it out there. And I just want to say, I want you to talk to your fans and the people that love you around the world in 2025 and just tell them, if you want to give them a message, please talk to the world, because they're going to look at this back in years to come. And I want them to know how you feel about what you've given the world, because you've given so much.
Okay, there was a record. Do you remember Minnie Riperton?
Yep.
She sang Loving You.
Yep.
But first, she was in a group called the Rotary Connection, and she was the lead. And the first record they put out is a song I wrote called Aladdin. And I'll just tell you the first verse. Um, Everybody needs someone that they can rely upon when all their hopes and dreams are gone and they're nowhere. Anytime you need a friend, on your love you can depend. Close your eyes and just pretend, and I'll be there because I am Aladdin and I can gladden you or sadden you. Do anything you want me to. I am Aladdin, so if you just decide to take my magic carpet ride, I'll show it all to you. And you know what? Woodstock was the answer. And then there's something in your eyes I see, a longing there to go with me. Wish real hard, and I will be at your command. I'll guide you to time and space and help you find that quiet place where there's a smile on every face. Just take my hand. Now, unfortunately, the way it's going in the world right now, uh, I got active again. I came out of hiding and got active again politically because I like people to smile at each other.
Artie, I just want to thank you. And I just want to say, every day that you wake up, you're bringing light to the world. And I just want to thank you so much for this interview.
Well, you know what? It's intentional.